The morning of May 6, 2019, unfolded like any other. Boston was awakening, stretching under a pale spring sky. Sunlight painted the old brick buildings with a gentle hand. Rush hour traffic moved with its usual sluggish rhythm. Cars sighed along Commonwealth Avenue, a metallic river flowing slow. Coffee shops hummed, a chorus of regulars and steaming cups. The air held the promise of a new day, ordinary and predictable. Everything felt normal. Too normal, perhaps. A fragile veneer, soon to be shattered. Dr. Lillian Hart was a name spoken with respect. At 44, she had carved out a significant space for herself. A clinical psychologist of considerable renown, her expertise was sought after. Her Beacon Hill private practice thrived, a testament to her skill. She specialized in the delicate art of trauma recovery, a difficult field. Survivors of abuse found solace in her calm demeanor. Veterans, haunted by war, sought her guidance. High-functioning professionals, teetering on the edge of burnout, trusted her. She was a healer of minds, a mender of fractured souls. Her office was more than just a room, it was a sanctuary. Suite 4B, nestled within a quiet, ivy-draped brownstone, a haven from the city's relentless pulse, a place of quietude. She had decorated it with meticulous care, every detail considered. Warm hues, soft lighting, an atmosphere designed to soothe. It was always warm, a comforting embrace for troubled minds. And always locked between sessions, a private world. Her domain, her fortress, a place where secrets were shared and healing began. That particular Monday, the sanctuary remained breached. Dr. Hart was scheduled to see her first client at 10. But the appointed hour came, and then it went. She never arrived. No call, no message, no warning. The meticulous Dr. Hart, a creature of habit and precision, simply did not show. Elena Morales, her 10 a.m. client, stood waiting. The polished wooden door to Suite 4B remained stubbornly closed. She checked her watch, a frown etching itself onto her forehead. Nearly 40 minutes had passed since her appointment time. This was unusual, highly unusual for Dr. Hart. Elena called the doctor's direct line. It rang, unanswered, into the digital void. She sent a text message, then another. No reply, just silence. But Elena didn't succumb to panic. Not immediately, not yet. There could be a perfectly reasonable explanation, she reasoned. A personal emergency. Sudden and unavoidable, perhaps. Maybe a severely delayed train, a common city frustration, or a family call, urgent and demanding her immediate attention. These things happened. Life was unpredictable, even for therapists. She tried to reassure herself, pushing down a rising unease. Dr. Hart was reliable. Something must have come up. She would hear soon. By noon, however, the tendrils of concern tightened their grip. The initial reassurances began to fray at the edges. This prolonged silence was out of character, deeply unsettling. Elena Morales made another call, this time to the building's front desk. The administrative assistant listened, her voice tinged with professional concern. A note was made, a promise to check. The ordinary rhythm of the brownstone was faltering, a subtle discord in the day's quiet symphony. The absence of Dr. Hart was becoming a palpable thing. At precisely 12:48 p.m., the decision was made. The building's landlord, accompanied by the assistant, ascended the stairs. A master key was produced, a small piece of metal holding many secrets. It slid into the lock of Suite 4B. The tumblers clicked. The door swung inward, revealing the room beyond. And what they discovered only deepened the burgeoning mystery. It raised far more questions than it offered any answers. A scene of chilling, inexplicable stillness. The office was silent, eerily so. No signs of a struggle, no overturned chair, no scattered papers, no shattered glass, no blood, no visible chaos, no hint of violence. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, but there was also no Dr. Hart. She was simply gone. Vanished, as if she had evaporated into the very air of her sanctuary. A ghost in her own well-ordered world. Her personal belongings remained, silent witnesses to her absence. Her handbag sat on the plush armchair by the window, its contents likely undisturbed, awaiting her return. Her mobile phone lay on the mahogany desk, still plugged in, charging. A lifeline, inexplicably abandoned. Her laptop was open, a half-finished progress note glowing on the screen. Words paused mid-thought, a session interrupted. Her coat, a familiar tweed, still hung neatly on the rack by the door. And her car, still parked in its designated spot, in the building's secure underground garage. Boston police officers arrived by 2 o'clock that afternoon. Their initial assessment was one of profound bafflement. There was no evidence of forced entry into Suite 4B. The locks were intact, the windows secure. No fingerprints seemed out of place, nothing to suggest an intruder. The scene was clean. Too clean. Security footage from the hallway camera offered a crucial yet perplexing clue. It showed Dr. Lillian Hart entering her office at 7:52 p.m. the previous evening. Sunday, but it showed no record of her ever leaving. A missing persons report was officially filed, a name added to a list no one ever wishes to join. Initially, the case was handled as potentially voluntary. Perhaps she had simply decided to walk away, to leave her life behind without a word. But within a critical 72 hours, that cautious assessment shifted. A growing, undeniable feeling that something was terribly wrong. This was not a woman who would simply disappear. This was not Lillian Hart. Her departure screamed of an unseen force. The clock ticked relentlessly onward, each second amplifying the silence. Elena Morales shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Outside Suite 4B, the polished hallway seemed to stretch infinitely. Dr. Hart was late, uncharacteristically, disturbingly late. 40 minutes had bled away since the scheduled 10 o'clock start. 40 minutes of unanswered calls, of texts met with digital indifference. A knot of unease began to tighten in Elena's stomach. This was not like Lillian, not like the woman who mapped her days with such precision. Something felt fundamentally wrong, a discordant note in a familiar melody. She tried Dr. Hart's line again, the phone pressed tight to her ear. The ringing echoed, hollow and unanswered, a sound full of emptiness. Each pulse of the ring seemed to mock her growing anxiety. She pictured the phone inside, on the doctor's desk perhaps, vibrating silently. Or perhaps its battery had died, a simple oversight. But Lillian was never one for simple oversights, not with her clients. Elena ended the call, a sigh escaping her lips, heavy with concern. The closed door of Suite 4B seemed more formidable now, a barrier not just of wood and paint but of sudden, inexplicable mystery. This was more than a delay, this was a void. With growing trepidation, Elena descended to the building's main reception. The administrative assistant, a woman named Carol, listened patiently. Her brow furrowed slightly as Elena recounted the missed appointment, the unanswered calls, the unusual silence from Dr. Hart. Carol made a note, her expression calm but thoughtful. She too knew Dr. Hart's punctuality, her unwavering professionalism. A quick call to the office line from the reception desk yielded the same result. Silence. The unease was now shared, a small ripple spreading through the quiet brownstone. It was decided. Someone needed to check. The building's landlord, Mr. Henderson, was a man of routine himself. He retrieved the master key for Suite 4B with a sense of reluctant duty. These situations were rare and always tinged with a hint of the unknown. He, Carol, and Elena ascended the stairs, a small, worried procession. The air felt thick with unspoken questions, with possibilities best left unvoiced. Standing before the locked door once more, Mr. Henderson paused. He announced his intention to enter, his voice echoing slightly. Then the key slid into the lock. A click, a turn. The door swung inward, and the ordinary morning shattered into a million perplexing pieces. Section 2, Suite 4B, A Portrait of Absence. The office lay before them, bathed in the soft morning light. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily. It was a picture of perfect, undisturbed order. Too perfect, too ordered. There were no signs of a struggle, no hint of disarray, no chair askew, no papers scattered in haste across the floor, no sign of violence, no scent of fear, no residue of chaos. The room was a portrait of tranquility, a study in stillness. But it was a stillness that felt wrong, deeply unsettling. a stillness that screamed of absence, profound and absolute. Dr. Hart's presence lingered, yet she was not there. Her familiar leather handbag rested on the small armchair near the window, placed there it seemed as if she had just set it down, as if she intended to pick it up again in mere moments. Her mobile phone lay on the polished surface of her desk, plugged into its charger, its screen dark and unresponsive to their presence. A lifeline left behind, a connection to the world inexplicably severed. It was a detail that snagged the mind, a small, sharp point of illogic. Why leave her phone? Why leave her link to everyone? The laptop, her digital confidant, was open on the desk. Its screen displayed a half-written progress note, the cursor blinking patiently. Words suspended mid-sentence, thoughts interrupted, frozen in time, as if she had been in the very act of typing when something called her away. Something urgent enough to abandon her work, her routine, her space. Her tweed coat, the one she wore most days in spring, hung on its hook, neatly placed on the brass rack just inside the door, awaiting its owner. It was another piece of the puzzle that refused to fit. She would not leave without her coat on a cool May morning. Not willingly. And then there was the matter of her car, her reliable sedan. A quick check of the building's secure underground parking garage confirmed it. It sat in its designated space, cold and silent, untouched, unmoved. She had arrived the previous evening, security footage would later confirm. She had parked her car, entered her office, and then, it seemed, she had simply ceased to continue her day. It was as if Dr. Lillian Hart had stepped out of her own life for just a moment and never ever stepped back in. Section 3. The Chilling Stillness. First Impressions. Mr. Henderson and Carol exchanged a wide-eyed, silent glance. The scene before them defied easy explanation, defied any explanation. This was not a simple case of a doctor running late. This was not an office hastily abandoned due to sudden illness. This was something else, something missing. The air itself felt heavy, thick with unspoken questions. The profound silence of the room was almost a physical presence. It pressed in on them. A quiet testament to an event unseen, an event that had left no mark, yet changed everything. The meticulous order was, in itself, the most disturbing clue. There was no note, no message scrawled in haste, no indication of a planned departure, however abrupt. Every item seemed to be exactly where Dr. Hart would have left it. Her pens neatly arranged, her books perfectly aligned on the shelves. The client files locked away securely, as per her strict protocol. It was the office of a woman who expected to return, who expected to resume her day, her work, her life. The contradiction was stark, a silent shout in the quiet room. The evidence of her presence was everywhere. The evidence of her departure, utterly, terrifyingly absent. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of their composure. Mr. Henderson, a man not easily flustered, felt a chill trace his spine. This was beyond his experience, beyond the mundane issues of property management. Carol fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. The decision was immediate, unspoken but unanimous. This was a matter for the Boston Police Department. This was not a simple welfare check anymore. This was the start of something far more complex, far more sinister. The ordinary facade of Suite 4B had crumbled, revealing an unsettling void where a life used to be. The initial call was logged, a brief, urgent report of a missing person, a person who had vanished from a locked room, leaving everything behind. The officers who would soon arrive would find the same scene, a room frozen in a moment of ordinary routine, untouched by struggle yet screaming of an unnatural stillness. No forced entry, no obvious clues, just an overwhelming sense of wrongness. Dr. Lillian Hart had not just left her office. It was as if the office itself had let her go, swallowed her whole, leaving only echoes and unanswered questions. The mystery had begun. Section 1. The Official Inquiry, a Deepening Enigma. The Boston Police Department officially took the reins of the investigation. Detectives walked through Suite 4B, their footsteps echoing in the stillness. They cataloged every item, every detail, searching for a single misplaced thread. The scene was pristine, almost unnervingly so, a tableau of interrupted routine. No fingerprints were found that didn't belong, no fibers out of place. It was as if Dr. Hart had simply dissolved, leaving no trace of her departure. The initial theory of a voluntary disappearance began to fray quickly. Friends and colleagues painted a portrait of a woman meticulously organized. A woman who would never leave without a word, without a plan. Her Brookline apartment was searched next, a quiet space reflecting her personality. Orderly, calm, subdued. Much like her office, it offered few immediate answers. Investigators moved through each room, seeking clues to her state of mind. They looked for signs of distress, of packing, of any preparation for a journey. Nothing. Her life seemed paused, waiting for her return, not her escape. Her diary showed upcoming appointments, notes for future sessions. Her finances were stable, no unusual transactions, no sudden withdrawals. The picture emerging was not of a woman fleeing, but of one taken, or one who had encountered something utterly unforeseen, utterly disruptive. The security footage from the brownstones hallway was reviewed countless times. Dr. Hart entering at 7:52 p.m. the previous night, calm, alone. Then, nothing. No image of her leaving, no sign of anyone else near her suite. The cameras covered the main exits, the stairwells, the elevator. It was a digital fortress, yet she had seemingly slipped through its cracks. Had she left by an unmonitored route? Unlikely in such a secure building. Was there a blind spot? Or had someone managed to bypass the system entirely? These questions hung heavy in the air of the incident room. Frustration mounted with each passing hour, each dead end. Within 72 hours the case was reclassified. No longer a simple missing person. This was something more complex, something darker. The lack of any discernible motive, any clear lead was baffling. Dr. Hart had no known enemies, no gambling debts, no secret life that anyone could uncover. She was a respected professional, dedicated to her patients, living a quiet life. Yet the evidence, or lack thereof, suggested an almost impossible vanishing. The investigators felt a growing unease, a sense that they were missing a crucial piece, a piece hidden just out of sight, obscured by the mundane details of her existence. They needed something to break the pattern, a crack in the facade. The breakthrough, when it came, was found in the most private of places. Beneath her bed, tucked away in a locked drawer, lay an anomaly. It was a burner phone. Cheap, disposable, utterly out of character for Dr. Hart. This was not her usual sleek smartphone, synced to her life and work. This was a ghost phone, designed for anonymity, for untraceable communication. Its discovery sent a ripple of shock through the investigative team. Why would a woman like Lillian Hart need such a device? What secrets did it hold? What kind of conversations necessitated such clandestine measures? The phone was not registered in her name, its origins obscure. It had no connection to her known accounts, her digital footprint. Forensic technicians carefully powered it on, hoping for a flood of information. Instead, they found a sparse landscape. Only 6 numbers were saved. 6 contacts in a device designed for secrecy. Each one a potent question mark. 5 of these numbers, when traced, led to clients. Current patients, or perhaps former ones. The context was unclear, but it was the 6th contact that drew every eye in the room. A single enigmatic name, Anima. A word that resonated with an unsettling, almost primal quality. The message history was minimal, almost surgically clean, but the few exchanges recovered were deeply disturbing, painting a grim picture. Short, cryptic sentences. A dialogue steeped in fear and urgency. One message, dated April 29th, sent at 11:41 p.m. read, "He knows, we're not safe." Who was he? What did he know? Safe from what or whom? Another, from the contact Anima, timestamped April 30th, 3 a.m. "I told you not to use this number unless it was urgent." The words implied a pre-existing protocol, a shared understanding of danger. This was not a casual acquaintance. This was a lifeline in a storm. A further message sent on May 2nd, just 4 days before she vanished. They're watching the clinic. Check under your desk. This was specific, actionable, a direct warning of surveillance. They remained undefined, a shadowy threat looming large. The instruction to check under her desk immediately sent investigators scrambling. Had they missed something crucial in their initial sweep of Suite 4B? The burner phone was no longer just a strange possession, it was a key, promising to unlock a hidden layer of Dr. Hart's life, a life far more complicated and far more perilous than anyone had imagined. The final message on the burner phone was the most chilling of all. It was time-stamped 4:19 a.m. on May 6th, the very morning of her disappearance. Just hours before Elena Morales would find the office door locked, the message was from Anima. It consisted of 2 stark words. "They're here." A pronouncement of immediate encroaching danger, a desperate final alert, and beneath it, the most unsettling detail. This message was never opened. Dr. Lillian Hart had never read this ultimate warning, or perhaps she had been unable to. The implication was terrifying. Had they arrived before she could even see the words? This discovery galvanized the investigation, shifting its focus dramatically. The cryptic messages, the shadowy he and they, the mysterious Anima. These were not the ramblings of a distressed mind, but fragments of a hidden conflict. Theories began to multiply, each more unsettling than the last. Was Anima a stalker? Someone whose obsession had turned dangerous? Or perhaps a delusional client drawing Dr. Hart into their fractured reality? Could it be a code name, part of something larger, something organized? The police considered every possibility, from personal vendettas to professional entanglements. The burner phone suggested a level of premeditation, of covert communication. Investigators immediately acted upon the instruction from the May 2nd message. Check under your desk. They had to return to Suite 4B. What had Lillian been expected to find? What secret was hidden there? The thought that a clue might have been waiting undisturbed for days. It added a new layer of urgency to their search for answers. This was no longer about finding a missing woman who might have walked away. This was about uncovering a potential conspiracy, a hidden threat. A threat that had seemingly consumed a respected psychologist. A threat that had used a burner phone as its dark channel. The existence of Anima and the nature of these exchanges. It suggested Dr. Hart was aware of a significant danger. She was not just a passive victim, she was an active participant in a hidden dialogue. A dialogue that ultimately, it seemed, had led to her silence. The burner phone had offered a glimpse into this secret world. But it had also deepened the shadows, revealing the presence of unseen players. The question was no longer just what happened to Dr. Hart, it was who was Anima, and what did they want? The answers, the police suspected, might be more terrifying than the questions. The message from the burner phone echoed in the minds of the investigators. Check under your desk. A simple instruction yet heavy with ominous portent. They had been in Suite 4B before, meticulously combing for clues, but the human eye, even a trained one, can miss what it isn't primed to find. Now, armed with this specific directive, their return to Dr. Hart's silent sanctuary felt different. It was a targeted search, a hunt for something deliberately concealed. The office, still pristine, still holding its breath, seemed to watch them. Every familiar object, the leather chair, the mahogany desk, the neatly shelved books, now held a potential hidden depth. A secret waiting to be unearthed by this new, unsettling knowledge. One detective, gloved and careful, knelt beside Dr. Hart's imposing desk. The underside was smooth, polished wood, seemingly unremarkable. He ran his hand along the surface, feeling for any irregularity, any telltale sign. Then, his fingers brushed against something small, something taped securely. It was tucked away in the deepest recess, almost invisible without direct scrutiny. A small dark object adhered to the underside of the main desk drawer. This was it. This had to be what Anima had warned her about. The discovery sent a fresh jolt of adrenaline through the quiet room. a tangible link to the fear expressed in those cryptic text messages. With painstaking care, the object was detached and brought into the light. It was a micro-cassette recorder, an almost archaic piece of technology in the digital age. Small, black, unassuming. Yet its presence there was profoundly significant. Why would Dr. Hart, a woman with a modern laptop and smartphone, use such a device? And why hide it so secretively, in a place only accessible by deliberate search? A single handwritten label was affixed to its side, typed neatly on a small sticker. The label bore two pieces of information, stark and electrifying. Session 43, Anima, the name again, Anima. No longer just a contact on a burner phone. Now it was linked to a specific recording, a numbered session. The implications were immediate and deeply troubling to the investigative team. This indicated that Anima was likely a patient, or at least someone Dr. Hart was treating as such. Session 43 suggested a series of interactions, a prolonged engagement. This wasn't a fleeting contact, this was an ongoing recorded dialogue. A dialogue deemed so sensitive, so dangerous, it had to be hidden from plain sight. The microcassette recorder felt cold in the detective's hand, a repository of unknown dread. What secrets did this tiny tape hold? What words had been spoken? What had Dr. Lillian Hart heard that compelled her to conceal this recording? The team knew, with a chilling certainty, that they were about to step deeper into the shadows. Section 2, Voices from the Tape, a Session of Shadows. The microcassette was carefully loaded into a player back at the precinct. An expectant hush fell over the room as the detective pressed play. A hiss of static filled the air, the sound of old technology stirring. Then a voice, male, but distorted as if deliberately altered. Or perhaps it was the sound of a voice fractured by immense stress, by paranoia. It was difficult to tell. The effect was undeniably unsettling, inhuman almost. He spoke in riddles, his words veiled in metaphor, laced with a chilling certainty. They say trauma leaves a scar, the distorted voice began, slow and deliberate. But what if the scar becomes a map? What if someone reads it? Dr. Hart's voice responded, a stark contrast to the man's unsettling tone. It was calm, clinical, measured, the voice of a seasoned psychologist. She sounded steady, attempting to navigate the murky waters of his pronouncements. "Who is reading it, Anima?" she asked, using the name from the label. Her tone was professional, trying to guide him, to understand the source of his fear. But the man, Anima, did not follow her lead into a discussion of his feelings. Instead, he offered a more direct, more accusatory statement. "You know who," the distorted voice rasped. "You spoke with him last Tuesday. He's one of them." A shiver ran through the listening officers. This was specific, pointed. Dr. Hart attempted to reframe his statements, to bring him back to a therapeutic context. "You're experiencing a break from consensus reality again," she suggested gently. Her training evident, she tried to label his experience as a symptom, a delusion, a common strategy for dealing with patients exhibiting paranoid ideations. She was trying to maintain control of the session, to steer it back to safety. But the man, Anima, would not be redirected so easily. He cut her off, his distorted voice sharp, insistent, almost mocking. "You still think this is a delusion, doctor?" he challenged. The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. The contents of the tape were profoundly disturbing, more so than they had anticipated. This was not a standard therapy session, if such a thing even existed with this patient. This was a verbal chess match, played out against a backdrop of profound fear. Dr. Hart, the skilled clinician, trying to understand and contain. Anima, the patient, pushing back, insisting on the reality of his unseen tormentors. The reference to one of them, and the claim she had met him, was particularly alarming. It suggested a network, an organization, the very they mentioned in the burner phone texts. The tape painted a picture of Dr. Hart grappling with something far beyond typical patient anxieties. She was dealing with a patient who believed he was hunted, and who believed she was now entangled. Section 3. The Patient Who Knew Too Much, Unmasking Kaylin Rhodes. The microcassette labeled Anima provided a name but not yet a face. Investigators turned their attention back to Dr. Lillian Hart's client logs. They cross-referenced her appointments, her notes, searching for any patient who might fit. Someone whose sessions aligned with the intensity heard on that disturbing tape. One name began to surface, flagged by several unsettling characteristics. Kaylin Rhodes, 37 years old, a software developer by trade. His file indicated he had been placed into mandatory therapy by his employer. The reason cited, a significant workplace breakdown. A breakdown characterized by what his company described as paranoid and potentially dangerous behavior. Kaylin Rhodes, according to the initial reports, claimed he was being watched, not by the government, not by foreign intelligence agencies, the usual suspects in such delusions, but by something far more nebulous, something he referred to only as the observers. This term resonated ominously with the themes on the Anima tape. In her official notes, Dr. Hart had described Kaylin Rhodes as a high-risk patient. She noted his complex delusional system, his deep-seated paranoia, standard clinical observations on the surface. But then, buried deeper within her private, more reflective jottings, something odd appeared. A note that sent a chill down the spines of the investigators reading it. Dr. Hart had written, almost as an aside, a thought that clearly troubled her. Quote, "He knows things, details about my life I haven't shared." This was a significant deviation from typical patient-therapist dynamics. How could a patient, especially one so new to her practice, know such personal details? Details she was certain she had never disclosed, not even inadvertently. Her note continued, revealing her own growing unease, her own eroding certainty. "I'm beginning to question whether this is simply psychosis," she wrote. And then the crucial, haunting addition, or something else entirely. This was not the detached observation of a clinician. This was the fear of a woman. The connection seemed undeniable. Kaylin Rhodes appeared to be Anima. His claims of being watched by observers, his apparent knowledge of her private life. It all aligned with the voice on the tape, with the cryptic warnings. And then, another piece of information clicked into place. A horrifying coincidence. Kaylin Rhodes had disappeared on April 13th. 3 weeks, 3 short weeks before Dr. Lillian Hart herself vanished. His case had never made headlines, treated as a voluntary departure. No foul play suspected. No official connection made to Dr. Hart at the time. But now that timing felt anything but coincidental. It felt like a prelude. Section 1. The genesis of a Whisper Project Anima surfaces. The official investigation into Dr. Hart's disappearance stalled. Weeks bled into months. Leads dried up like desert streams. Boston PD faced a wall of silence, a void of tangible evidence. It seemed Lillian Hart had simply evaporated from existence. But as official channels grew quiet, unofficial whispers began to stir. Murmurs in online forums, anonymous tips reaching sympathetic ears, fragments of a story far stranger than a simple missing person case. A story of something hidden, something organized, something that had a name that chilled the blood project Anima. The first concrete breadcrumb was small, almost insignificant. A minor news report buried deep in the city archives. A break-in at the Massachusetts Board of Psychology. April 2021. No valuables stolen. No digital records obviously compromised. Just one archive box, briefly disturbed, then refiled out of order. Inside, Dr. Lillian Hart's 2007 license application. And a newly added handwritten post-it note. It asked a simple yet profoundly disturbing question. She passed. But did she pass the filter? What filter? Who was asking? The questions multiplied. Then, a more substantial tremor shook the foundations of the case. An old email, dredged from a decommissioned MIT server, part of an unrelated research grant application from years prior. The project lead, a Dr. Abraham G. Kloss. The proposal title was innocuous enough, academic in its phrasing. Applied personality disruption, cognitive access, suggestibility, and response in highly empathic clinicians. But a nickname, a chilling shorthand, was used within the document, Project Anima. The grant was publicly denied. Officially, it never existed. But the Whispers suggested otherwise. The Whisper spoke of shadows. The proposal outlined a disturbing methodology. It aimed to recruit therapists, high empathy, high intelligence individuals. They were to be enrolled in what was termed a passive cognitive relay program, a framework designed for a terrifying purpose, to test the absolute limits of psychological exposure, to explore the malleability of human suggestion, to probe the possibility of memory overwrite, all conducted through the sacred space of therapeutic dialogue. Dr. Lillian Hart, specialist in trauma, empathic healer, she was the perfect candidate, too perfect. Section 2, The Architecture of a Nightmare Inside Anima's Design. The Whispers solidified into a more coherent narrative. A redacted whistleblower report filed with a federal health agency. It spoke of a clandestine operation, a scaled-down version of Project Anima. It had proceeded, in secret, invite only. Recruiters posing as academic liaisons approached their targets, selected therapists, grief counselors, military psychologists. They were offered unique opportunities to work with challenging patients. Patients linked to advanced trauma research, they were told. But these patients were not what they seemed. They were phantoms, constructs, carefully crafted deceptions. These patients were, according to the whistleblower, integral to the experiment. They were the primary tool of observation and manipulation. Handlers embedded within the therapeutic setting, playing a complex role. Their histories were fabricated, their traumas meticulously designed. Kalen Rhodes, with his non-existent background and claims of observers, fit this profile. He was not there to be healed. He was there to engage, to test, to destabilize. The stated goal was to study resilience in clinicians. What happens when a therapist becomes the subject of intense psychological pressure? What happens when the therapeutic mirror reflects not the patient, but a void? But the informant, a self-proclaimed former Project Anima analyst, hinted at more. The objective wasn't merely to observe resilience. It was darker. It was to see if a therapist's mind could be accessed. Could their empathy be weaponized, turned against them? Could their memories be subtly altered, their perceptions warped? The project sought to understand the breaking point, and perhaps, what lay beyond it. Kalen Rhodes, the supposed patient, had exceeded his parameters. He went off script. The interactions with Dr. Hart became too real. He revealed knowledge he shouldn't possess. Then he vanished. A precursor to Dr. Hart's own disappearance. The ethical implications were staggering, a chasm of moral bankruptcy. To manipulate the sanctity of the therapeutic relationship, to turn a healer into an unwitting test subject, to potentially shatter a mind in the name of clandestine research. Dr. Sarah Fielding, a respected trauma researcher when presented with the theory, was cautious. She acknowledged the scientific plausibility of such stress tests. Covert observation, delusion feedback loops, these were known concepts, but she emphasized the profound ethical breach. It's the ethics that are the problem, she stated, not the science, a cold comfort for anyone caught in Anima's unseen web. Section 3, Echoes in the Machine, the conspiracy deepens. The official silence surrounding Project Anima was deafening. Boston PD offered no comment. Federal agencies denied its existence. Yet the unofficial narrative continued to grow, fueled by new leaks. An anonymous Dropbox folder shared with a handful of journalists. Inside, a chilling audio clip, poor quality, but undeniably powerful. Dr. Hart's voice, strained, dated 5 days before she vanished. "If you're hearing this, I've already made a mistake," she confessed. "I thought I was helping someone find themselves, but I think I was helping them hide me." Then, a barely audible whisper, a phrase repeated. "The client becomes the clinician. The clinician becomes the subject." The words resonated with a horrifying clarity. Then came the Boston Public Library hack in early 2024. A single folder, Hart Returns, mysteriously uploaded. Its contents, a PDF titled Progress Notes Patient Anima. The final entry, purportedly by Dr. Hart, was a descent into cognitive chaos. "I've started dreaming in second person," the notes read. "I don't feel watched, I feel inhabited. I'm no longer sure whose memories I'm processing. She wrote of saying things she didn't remember learning. A chilling conclusion. I was the observer. Now I'm the observed. Was this her true state of mind, or fabricated evidence in a larger game? The lines between victim, participant, and program blurred. The conspiracy theories surrounding Project Anima began to mutate. Was it a rogue government experiment, a black-budget operation gone too far, or a private entity, a shadowy corporation exploring the frontiers of psychological control? Some even whispered that Anima wasn't a project name at all. Perhaps it was a designation for something else entirely. Something not human. Something that studied, rather than being studied. Kalen Rhodes, was he merely a disturbed man, a clever operative, or an emissary from a place beyond comprehension? The questions spiraled, each more terrifying than the last. The truth, it seemed, was a luxury no one involved could afford. Dr. Lillian Hart remained missing. Officially, a cold case. But the discovery of the burner phone, the microcassette, the leaks. They painted a picture of a woman entangled in something vast and terrifying. Something that sought not just to make her disappear physically, but to deconstruct her very identity, her perception of reality. The cryptic message found etched in her desk drawer took on new weight. Therapy is a mirror. Sometimes it shows who's behind you. What had Lillian seen in that final horrifying reflection? And was Project Anima still active, its tendrils reaching unseen into other lives? The final upload was a detonation, a digital shockwave. Session 46 accepted. Subject identified you, begin recall. These words, stark and chilling, ripped through the internet's consciousness. No longer was Dr. Lillian Hart a distant, tragic figure. No longer was Project Anima a shadowy conspiracy for niche forums. Suddenly the lens had turned outward, sharply, accusingly. The you was unambiguous. It was personal. It was terrifyingly inclusive. The story of the vanished therapist had breached its confines. It was no longer story. It had become potential nightmare. News outlets, initially cautious, could no longer ignore the escalating phenomenon. The Anima message, as it was quickly dubbed, went viral. Major networks ran segments, their anchors struggling to frame the narrative. Was it a sophisticated prank, a piece of viral marketing for something unknown? Or was it, as a growing, terrified chorus insisted, something horrifyingly real? Online communities dedicated to the Hart case exploded with activity. Millions dissected the audio, the phrasing, the implications of begin recall. Personal anecdotes flooded social media, sudden, vivid memories, unexplained anxieties. A collective sense of unease settled over the digital landscape, a creeping dread. Governments and official psychological associations issued hurried statements. They condemned the message as a malicious hoax designed to incite fear. They urged calm, appealing to reason, to skepticism. But their reassurances sounded hollow against the rising tide of public alarm. The architects of the Anima leaks had played their masterstroke. They had bypassed traditional gatekeepers, injecting their narrative directly into the public psyche, making each listener a potential participant. The line between observer and observed had not just blurred, it had shattered. The terror was no longer contained to a missing therapist. It was now a contagion, spreading with every click, every share. The question was no longer solely about Dr. Hart's fate. It was about the nature of this new, insidious communication. Who was behind it? And what did begin recall truly signify? Were they attempting to trigger something, to monitor responses? The media frenzy fed the paranoia, creating a feedback loop of fear. Talk shows hosted experts who offered conflicting, often sensational theories. The story of Lillian Hart had become a living, breathing entity, an urban legend for the digital age, its tendrils reaching everywhere. And the central, terrifying question remained, what happens when the therapy session includes the entire world? The Session 46U message sent tremors far beyond the general public. It struck at the very heart of the psychological profession. Therapy, a sanctuary built on trust, confidentiality, and the promise of healing, now found itself under an unprecedented, insidious siege. How could patients confide their deepest vulnerabilities, their fragile memories, when the specter of Project Anima suggested such trust could be exploited? When Beg and Recall echoed with the chilling implication of external manipulation? The sacred space between therapist and client felt suddenly exposed, vulnerable. A subtle poison of doubt began to seep into consultation rooms worldwide. Practicing therapists reported a palpable shift in their patients. Anxieties, a new hesitancy to explore certain topics. Some patients directly referenced the Anima case, their fear tangible. Are you sure this is confidential? Could someone be listening to us? These were no longer abstract concerns, they felt immediate, personal. Therapists themselves were not immune. The story of Lillian Hart, one of their own, allegedly turned into a subject. It served as a chilling cautionary tale, resonating with professional anxieties. Were their own empathic skills a potential vulnerability? Could their minds too become a target for unseen observers? Ethical boards and psychological associations grappled with the fallout. They issued guidelines attempting to reassure both clinicians and the public. They emphasized the fictional nature of such extreme scenarios, the robustness of ethical codes. But the Anima narrative, with its potent blend of truth and terror, was hard to dispel. It preyed on deep-seated fears about control, about mental integrity. The very idea of memory overwrite or cognitive relay programs, even if fictional, tainted the perception of what psychological exploration could entail. The implications for research ethics were also profound. If such a program, even in theory, could exist, what safeguards were truly sufficient? The Anima effect was a contagion of doubt, spreading like a virus. It challenged the fundamental tenets of therapeutic practice. The trust that a therapist was a guide, not a conduit for something else. The belief that memories shared were safe, not data points for an unknown agenda. Lillian Hart's ordeal, amplified by the you message, had become a symbol of the ultimate betrayal of the therapeutic alliance. The profession, dedicated to mending minds, now had to confront a narrative suggesting minds could be systematically, covertly, broken. The silence after Beg and Recall was filled with a million unspoken fears. The world did not stop. Life on the surface continued. Yet, beneath the veneer of normalcy, something had irrevocably shifted. The Anima effect was more than just a passing internet scare. It was the insidious creep of a new kind of paranoia into the collective subconscious. The idea that one's own mind might not be entirely one's own, that memories could be suspect, that thoughts could be seeded. This was the chilling legacy of the Session 46U message. It had normalized a level of existential doubt previously confined to fiction. The new abnormal was a quiet, pervasive questioning. The phrase memory litigation, once a bizarre footnote in leaked documents, began to appear in dark humor, in anxious online whispers. What if your recollections could be challenged, not by evidence, but by suggestion? What if your internal narrative was no longer a reliable record? The Anima story had provided a framework for these anxieties. It gave a name and a narrative to free-floating fears about surveillance, about manipulation in an increasingly complex, opaque world. The lines between a genuine psychological concern and an Anima-induced fear became increasingly disturbingly blurred. For some, the world now felt like a vast, subtle experiment. Had Project Anima, if it ever truly existed as described, achieved its ultimate goal? Not just to neutralize a single therapist, Dr. Lillian Hart, but to subtly alter the psychological landscape for everyone, to instill a background hum of uncertainty, a low-grade fear. Was this the true meaning of the client becomes the clinician becomes the subject? Were we all now unwilling subjects in a grand unseen therapeutic experiment? Or was this the power of a well-crafted narrative, a story so potent it could reshape perception simply by being told, by being believed? The ambiguity was perhaps the most unsettling part of it all. The mystery of Dr. Lillian Hart was no longer about finding a missing woman. It was about navigating a world where her story had become a pervasive echo, a reminder of the mind's fragility, of trust's delicate nature, and of the terrifying possibility that someone, somewhere, was still listening. still observing, still perhaps preparing for the next session. The silence that followed Begin Recall was not an ending, it was an invitation, or a command, to look inward, and to wonder, with a newfound chill, whose thoughts are these really? The Anima effect was living within us now. Dr. Lillian Hart remains a ghost in the official records. Years have now passed since her silent, inexplicable departure. Her name is still whispered in Boston's quiet corners, a haunting refrain, a chilling footnote in the annals of unsolved disappearances, a modern enigma. The police files grow thicker with theories, yet the core mystery endures, untouched. No definitive answers have ever pierced the veil of shadows surrounding her fate. Was she a victim of circumstance, a knowing participant, or something else entirely? The truth, it seems, remains deliberately, frustratingly obscured from view. A cold case that refuses to truly grow cold, its embers still smoldering, its unsettling warmth a reminder of questions still demanding to be asked. The story of Dr. Hart, however, transcended its official classification long ago. It became more than just a search for a missing woman, a headline fading with time. Project Anima, whether a terrifying fact or an elaborate, cruel fiction, burrowed deep. It lodged itself into the collective psyche, a persistent, insidious seed of profound unease. It tapped into fundamental primal fears about the sanctity of our own minds. Our memories, our identities, our very perception of self suddenly felt fragile. The sacred space of therapy, once considered a haven of trust, felt subtly breached. Could trust itself become a weapon? Empathy, a dangerous vulnerability to exploit? This narrative left behind a palpable residue, a faint, lingering paranoia, a question mark hanging heavily over every unspoken thought, every private fear. Her final, fragmented messages, or those chillingly attributed to the Anima architects, echo still in the digital ether, refusing to fade into comfortable silence. The final session never ended. A pronouncement that hangs heavy, a perpetual cliffhanger. Session 46 accepted, subject identified, you. A terrifying, unwelcome expansion of the frame. The implication was stark, unavoidable. This was no longer contained within Suite 4B. The experiment, if indeed it ever was a structured experiment, had broken its bounds. Or perhaps, its true terrifying scope was only just being gradually, chillingly revealed. The unsettling sensation of being observed, of being listened to by unseen entities, became a quiet, unwelcome companion for those who knew her harrowing story. A sense that the dialogue was, and perhaps always is, still disturbingly ongoing. So, what remains in the unsettling wake of Dr. Lillian Hart's inexplicable vanishing? A complex, disturbing tapestry woven from fear, wild speculation, and profound, enduring uncertainty. Was it all a meticulously orchestrated hoax? A grand deception designed solely to unsettle and confuse? Or was it a terrifying glimpse into a genuine conspiracy, a hidden layer of our shared reality? Perhaps the elusive truth lies somewhere in the murky, shadowed space between these poles. Her story serves as a stark, modern fable, a deeply disturbing cautionary warning, about the mirrors we hold up to ourselves and what or who might be staring back, about the unseen forces that may subtly shape our perceived realities, our very thoughts. The final session in its truest, most haunting sense is never truly, finally over. It resonates onward, a persistent question whispered in the quiet solitude of the mind.